Shalom Aleichem and welcome to Machan Leira online smicha. Some of the nishkevunchen halachas that people know is the halacha of shiva. Shiva is the 7 days that a relative mourns after one of his close relatives. And the question is, what is the significance and what is the mucker and how serious is to mourn specifically 7 days? Where does that come from? So it's an interesting discussion. The Gemara says in Masechta Moed Katan, Daf Chof Amid Aleph, Yosef Rab Chia bar Abba, v'Rab Ami, v'Rab Yitzchak Nafcha Akila. Rab Chia bar Abba, Rab Ami, and Rab Yitzchak were sitting in the hallway of a house. Whose house? The hallway of Rab Yitzchak ben Elazar. Nafak Milsa Beinayu, amongst their conversation, a halacha came out. They were discussing. Minayin velus shiva. How do we know that Rahman al-Atlan, that a person is mourning, he has to mourn for 7 days? So they bring a pasuk from the Navi Amos. Over there the pasuk says, "V'hafachti chagechem le'evel." Hashem says, God forbid, the Navi says, if things don't go well and you don't listen, I will turn over your happy days, your holidays, into Evo Rahman al-Atlan, into days of mourning. So the Gemara says, we're comparing happy days to mourning days. Ma chag shiva, just like happy days. We know the Yom Tovim of Pesach and Sukkot are 7 days. Af avelos shiva, so too Rahman al-Atlan, if it's a situation of avelos, it's also 7 days. Frag the Gemara, how are you so sure it's the Yom Tov of Pesach or Sukkot? Maybe ve'ema la tzeres, the eina chad yema. Maybe, God forbid, it's going to turn over to a time of mourning in the same time period of Shavuos, which is only 1 day. So maybe one has to mourn only 1 day. So the Gemara answers, you know what? There are some times, halachically, somebody only mourns 1 day, and there are some times when a person, Rahman al-Atlan, has to mourn for 7 days. What's the difference? And for the Gemara, we need to know that there is a celebration, a day of mourning that's only 1 day compared to Shavuos, the Gabi the halacha of Reish Lakish. The Amr Reish Lakish Mishim Rabbi Yehuda Nisaya, Rabbi Reish Lakish said in the name of Rabbi Yehuda the Nasi that there is a difference between a time when a person lives and learns that somebody, a close relative, passes away and he hears about it very close to the time that it happened, or if a relative hears about somebody, a relative of his that passed away, he heard it days later. So when Minay and Reish Lakish said, Minay and Lishmur Rechaika. How do we know if somebody heard the bad report about a relative of his has passed away when he heard it many days after it happened? How do we know that he doesn't have to sit shiva for 7 days? It's enough that it's Yom Echad 1 day, because of this same pasuk. The pasuk says, the Eibusha says, the Navi says, I will flip over your holidays for days of mourning. So because the days of mourning, because holidays, there are some holidays that are only 1 day, like Shavuos. So Shmur Rechaika is flipped over for like a holiday of 1 day, and you only do the dinim of mourning for 1 day, Chag, because we also find a Yom Tiv that's only 1 day. So what do we see from this Gemara? That when a person, in a regular case, or when you know that you just heard the news and it just happened that a close one passed away, you have to sit shiva. You have to do the halachas for 7 days. If it's a shmur rechaika, it's 1 day, and both you learn from the same pasuk, the pasuk of Afachti Chagechem le'evel. Now the truth is like this: the poskim say that there is a big difference between the halachas of the avelus for the first day, for only 1 day, and as it extends into the 7 days, because the halacha of avelus for 1 day, that actually we have another pasuk for. We have a pasuk that says the pasuk says that the pasuk says that. By who was it? By Moshe Rabbeinu. By Moshe Rabbeinu it says, 1 second, by Moshe Rabbeinu it says, by Moshe Rabbeinu it says, where is it? Because the Rambam in Hilchos Aval, Perik Aleph, Halacha Aleph, says like this: Mitzvahs asay lis abel al akrayim. It's a mitzvah asay in the Torah to mourn on a relative that passed away. Shenemar v'chalti chatas hayoim hayitav be'ena Hashem. If a person who Rahman al-Islam was mourning, if he would eat a carbon, would that be good? But he said that the day of the person passing away. So the Avelis min HaTorah is for sure one day. Whether it also goes for more than one day, that's a machlekes if it's min HaTorah or midrabanan. But the one day from the Rambam says the mitzvah saseh is va'achalti chatas hayom, and the Rambam says ein Avelis min HaTorah ol b'yom rishon b'vad. The Rambam shita is that the min HaTorah Avelis is only for one day, but the rest of the days is not min HaTorah, and the Rambam brings a pasuk. Now the Rambam does not bring the pasuk that the Gemara says by us in Meir Katan v'afachti chageichem la'evo. The Rambam brings another pasuk which is very controversial. The Rambam brings a pasuk that Tosfos and Nazir quotes and other mefarshim, and the Rambam's pasuk is from Yosef, that when Yaakov Avinu passed away, vayas la'avev evo shivas yamim, that Yosef mourned after his father Yaakov for 7 days. So we see a pasuk that it should also be for 7 days. Now, what did the Rambam just do? The Rambam said the first day it's a mitzvah saseh, it's min HaTorah. The rest of the days it's only a remez. You just quoted a pasuk. You just quoted a pasuk that Yosef did this for his father 7 days. So let me tell you the background of this Shakla V'Tarya. The pasuk is a major problem, and all the mefarshim jump on this because first of all the pasuk by Yosef was Koydem Matan Torah. That happened before Matan Torah, and we have a rule that Ein Lameidim Halacha Mikoydem Matan Torah. And this actually Tosfos here and Moed Katan discusses that. Number two, the She'ilta says, how could you bring a pasuk from Yaakov, from Yosef and Yaakov, to prove you have to do it for Shiva Yomim, when it could be that's different, because that was Yaakov Avinu. Yaakov Avinu was a very chashav tzaddik. For him, you have to mourn for 7 days. But how about a regular person, not in that level? Maybe you don't have to. So these are not psukim that prove that you have to really do avelos for 7 days min HaTorah. The Yerushalmi in the end of Moed Katan brings other psukim. He first brings the pasuk as Yaakov and Yosef, but he himself says that's not the best raya because it's before Matan Torah. But then he brings other psukim. Rav Yaakov Bar Acha B'Shem Reb Zeira says that you learn it out from when the Eibishter told Moshe how to anoint and how to get the Mishkan ready for action. After it was built, the pasuk says, "Upesach Oyel Moed Teishvu Yoimim V'Layla Shivas Yomim Mishmarta Mishkan Hashem." That you have to sit there, guard the Oyel Moed for 6 days. Shivas Yomim 7 days. Yoimim V'Layla Ushmarta Mishkan Hashem. So the Yerushalmi says, "Kishem Shashimer Hakadosh Baruch Hu Seilam Shiva," just like the Eibishter watched, guarded the first 7 days of his world. The Eibishter waited. Kach atam shimru alachechem shiva. So too, every year has to wait with his brother, with a deceased family member. Wait shiva. That's one raya. Then the Yerushalmi brings another raya. How you can know it has to be shiva, because the pasuk said that when Noach, when the Mabul happened, the pasuk says, "Vayihi l'shiva sayomim," after 7 days, and the Mabul started. Why did it start after 7 days? So we know the Eibishter didn't want to start it within the shiva of the Evel of Mr. Shelach. Mr. Shelach was a tzaddik, and he didn't want to start the Mabul within the shiva. Or another pasuk, Al na si kimeis tisaga shiva yomim. So we see these are all other remuzim. Now again, most of the opinions hold that even though I brought a bunch of psukim to allude that Avelos Shiva has a source, but it's most of the opinions say that, like the Rambam, that Shiva, that Avelos the first day is min HaTorah. The rest of the days are only midrabanan, and these are all asmachtas. I would love to share with you a vart I once heard by a Levaya, and the vart was Nebuch given by a son, a pretty young son, a 16-year-old son that lost his father, and he was brokenhearted. So at the Levaya, he said, "Isn't it ironic that you have to that there's a concept of shiva, of mourning for 7 days? Where else do we find the shiva? Is Sheishish Yimei Breishis on Shabbos. The world was created in 6 days. The Shabbos is the 7th day. What's the connection?" So he said a fascinating thing. He says, Rahmana Litzlan, when a relative passes away, in his case it was his father passes away, the Eibush is sending a message. The Eibush says, now you have to go rebuild your own world. And just like when the Eibush built the world, there was 6 days on Shabbos, so that's why it's the concept of Shiva.